this demo, it really doesn't matter which one we choose. Should I make this bigger? Can you guys see it in the back? This is always great. You ask 2 questions. Can you see it? And should I make it bigger? So when you answer this, I don't know which one you mean. So, should I make it bigger? One you can, yes. Okay. One guy had the energy to move his head. The other ones are just waiting for the Lumia phone to land in their pockets. Thank you, guys. Okay, now it's a bit better, hopefully. So what you get when you create a new project, you get the design view, so what the page will look like, the XAML, Extensible Application Markup Language. We use this to define static UIs over there. In XAML you can do calculations, or you can do React events and so on. In XAML you just define what the UI would look like and define the different UI elements. And then in the solution Explorer we see, well, we have one solution and we have one project inside it, phone app part1. Have some files over here. App is application level file. We'll talk about that a bit more when we go in after the lunch break, when we go to navigation and multitasking. You have a couple of images over here. Application icon, basically the icon that will be shown in the full application listing. Background, to know why it's named background, it's the live file. And splash screen image, which is basically the screen, the image that will be shown when the application loads up. So if you want to change the application icon, just replace this file. And then we have main page, which is basically just a single page over here. If we now look at this, in this page we have a grid, this area over here. Inside that grid we have 2 rows. So grids work kind of like tables. We have rows and columns. First row and second row. First row auto use up all the space that's needed to fit the elements, and star use the rest of the available space. Inside that we then have a, let me just hide this one as well. Inside that we have a stack panel. Stack panel is, we have these different layout controls like grid and stack panel canvas. Stack panel, surprise, what it does, you put the elements inside it and it stacks them below each other. So for a grid, if you want to stack items below each other, you say row, 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 and then align them over there, or you just use a stack panel and align them below each other. If you want to have more complex layouts, then you use grids to define rows and columns. If you want to just stack stuff below each other, or if we change the orientation, horizontal, next to each other, then just use a stack panel. Notice this is located on grid row 0. So starting the count from 0, it's located on this row. From there we have 2 text blocks, which is basically just text, my application, and page name, which you see over here. Then we have another grid content panel located in grid row 1. Now what we could do is we have the toolbox over here with the add control and all kinds of stuff. So we're just going to drag and drop a button, and we could resize it, and this generates a XAML. And that's perfectly valid XAML. Same thing if you write it, button, then let's put width and height, and some content. So notice that for text blocks, you say text, but for a button, you would say content. Why? Because who says that a button should contain only text? A button could contain an image or video and so on. In Silverlight, like we're in the web world, well, the button was the only thing that had a click event. So if you wanted to have, everything else had just mouse left button up and down. If you wanted to have a click event in an image, you would just put it inside a button and basically get the functionality of the button over there. So you could have, as I said, image, video, text, or you could have a button in your button in your button in a button with an image. If you find a valid case for that, please let me know. I'm still looking for that. Someone asked me once, why should you use that? Like, because you can. So then when we start writing events, and there were a couple of Silverlight developers here, so usually someone gets offended by this, but then you define a click, and you learn how to do a button click, you know most of the stuff about Silverlight that you should know. Like, why? Let's first introduce you to your new best friend. When I select click, it says new event handler. So I define an event, click, and a handler for that event. I just hit my favorite key, tab, it generates button click. Now this button click will be located in my code behind. So behind these XAML pages, behind the static UI, you have a code behind file. For example, main page XAML CS, C#. And over here it generated me a button click event handler. I could write it by hand or I could just hit tab. And then someone says like, oh, you don't really do real coding, you just hit the tab away. Real coding isn't writing private void button click every single time you do something. Redundant. We're just making tools to make life easier for you. And this is the point where I get people angry. When you learn button click, you learn pretty much everything. There's some stuff that you need to add because Silverlight is event driven. So we have button click events, we have download completed events, we have progress changed event, accelerometer reading changed event, location changed events. We're closing, we're launching, we're deactivated, we're activated. Everything's an event over here. You just hook up to these events and react to them, and that's how you work. So in XAML, you could hook up to that event, but what you do when you react to it, you do that in C#. Let me make this also bigger. So we could do something really innovative on a button click and show a message box saying hello.
Word.
No, not that easy. We're going to say stay there. Huh? Didn't see that? Innovative, I told you so. Okay, so the first time the emulator starts up, it takes a small while because it's the first time it boots up. But the good news is that you don't close, well now it's booted up and now it's going to deploy the app over there. You don't have to close it every time you stop debugging. You just be attached to the debugger, publish the new app, it's much faster. And you will be amazed when you see this. Thank you. So, idea here was just to show you, now when we go further, like this day, you'll see that we'll do a lot of stuff with events. We'll do a lot of like working together with XAML and C# and so on. I want to return to the slides because I want to go through all of these